people are upset that she didn't preserve the look of the Disney classic of Snow White, of white skin, right? That's what this movie's about, her having snow white skin. So the way that I would fix that, right? Because acting is about, you're not the character, right? You're embodying a character. You as the actor are going to take on this character. You're not actually the actor. You're not actually the character. You're going to take it on. So how would I fix that? Very, very, very simple. If they were so dead set in casting Rachel Zegler, which they were, you fix that in the way that Tim Burton did the makeup on Johnny Depp for Sweeney Todd, right? No one cares, right? They made him look like very pale. They also did it in Dark Shadows, right? Edward Scissorhands. They made him very pale. No one cares. If they want to preserve the look of the original, just make her look like the character. You can make anybody look like anybody. Robert Downey Jr. played an African American in Tropic Thunder. You can make anyone look like anyone. They should have just used their special effects, and no one would have cared. So I just got done watching Disney's Snow White, starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. And let me tell you that her ethnicity and her skin tone was the least of their problems. The film absolutely lacked direction, it lacked vision, and it lacked storytelling. And I'm gonna teach you what I would do to save this film if I had the opportunity to do that. All right, so one of the biggest problems that most people had were the 7 dwarfs, them being CG. Here's what I would have done to fix that problem. Okay, so I'm sure that you've seen Lord of the Rings, right, with Elijah Wood, right, as a hobbit, and how he was much smaller compared to everyone else in the film, right? This was done by different techniques. One of the things was forced perspective, where one of the characters, like Gandalf, would be closer to the camera and he would be further away, and they would have different props near Elijah built smaller, so it created the illusion that he was smaller. So I think that they should have done this with actual actors instead of CGI dwarfs, because these creations that they did, they looked like some sort of evil garden gnome or some sort of like leprechaun mix that you see in a horror movie. These things were creepy. Like, they tried to make them like humanistic. How I would fix that is cast real actors, all right, give them a chance to, I know there was a lot of backlash with Peter Dinklage in terms of, are we still doing that shit, casting dwarfs for these roles? The way we could have fixed that is you just cast other actors. They don't have to be dwarfs. We shrink them down in post, all right? Fix it in post, as I'd say. Another issue that people were having is that Gal Gadot was noticeably, in many people's opinion, more attractive than Rachel Zegler. So I'm going to push back on that. Not on who's better looking, but I'm going to push back on, if you take the classic Evil Queen, right? She was still pretty, even though we're talking about cartoons here, but she was still pretty. She wasn't like an Ursula type character, okay? So I think that casting Gal Gadot in that role, it was fine. It wasn't about the look. I think it was more about the acting that was the problem, in terms of there was a lot of they forced her to appear evil. All right, now I think that comes off as weak acting, right? Because if it looked like she was forcing herself to be evil, then that goes on weak acting. So I don't think that necessarily the casting was the bad part. But what they could have done is they could have aged her up a little bit, maybe using some special effects. This way it's more believable that she's not the fairest of them all. Another way I would have fixed it is just simply recast. You didn't need to have Gal Gadot there. You could have, you know who would have been perfect, in my opinion? They should have cast Demi Moore, because she just got done making The Substance, which was a story about a fading star who was chasing youth. And this is a very similar theme to Snow White. So I think that would have been a great opportunity to have recast the role to Demi Moore. Let's just take Rachel's ethnicity and skin tone aside, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody noticed it, but they did, by they I mean Disney, did do a little bit of color grading, and they lightened her up a little bit, so to speak, which was unnecessary. But what I think, as far as casting her for this role, is that she just looked too young for it. She looked like she was a 12-year-old girl, and that, I think that a lot that had to do with that was the costume was atrocious. It was absolutely dreadful. And I've been doing a lot of work in Jack Sparrow costuming, so I know a thing or two about costumes, and just the way that fit was terrible. They should get the costume department and fire them all, because they did an absolute travesty throwing her in that dress, especially with the droopy shoulders. Like, they weren't like perky at all. They were literally droopy, like making her appear just like a sad, feeble character the whole time, which didn't match. It doesn't match her persona. It's not flattering at all either. And also the hairstyle. They should fire them as well. Her hairstyle was very flat. Like, if you look at the original, or even just if you go to the parks and you see the actors playing Snow White, they have the wigs on that have some body to the hair, right? A little bit of movement and some waves in there. Her hair was literally just parted and flat, and then it did this weird tuck. Now, back on the costume, the way that it was cut, proportion-wise, it made her torso look like it was about 2 inches tall. They like I said, whoever was in charge of the costuming here did a very, very bad job, especially in the waist part. I don't know if they were trying to make it like a corset or something like that, but it looked like it was like a solid piece of cardboard with no flexibility when she moved. It was just like almost like like the original Batman, where he had like a solid rib piece. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. It didn't even look like a real dress. It looks like they cut fabric and glued it onto some sort of cardboard or like plastic tube, like you put around a dog's neck, and then slapped it around her. That's what her dress looked like, which is a big part of the brand of these Disney movies, like especially the princess, is their dress. It's a big part of it. It's a big part of the IP, and it failed miserably there as well. How would I fix that? Easy. You fire the team, bring a new team in. Hairstylists, if they signed off on that hair and they signed off on those dresses like that, then they shouldn't be in the position that they're in, because we all know at a $250 million budget, they're well overpaid. And at that point, it just feels like they didn't care. If they signed off on that shit, they should be fired. All right? Like I said, I got a background in making Jack Sparrow costumes, which is one of the greatest costumes of all time. So I know what I'm talking about. Rachel Zegler's performance, like I said, the skin tone and ethnicity were the least of the problems here. Her acting was just way off. It was very controlled. It was her emotions never matched her expressions. The words that she was singing never matched her acting. It was almost like, I don't know, maybe she wasn't ready for this yet. Like, she got pushed up way too fast in terms of the acting ladder, and never really learned how to act. And you could tell. And there's I don't know, a lot of people aren't even going to see this, but go back and watch some of the parts where she's acting, like especially when the Sebastian Stan, generic Sebastian Stan lookalike, gets shot with the arrow. It's like, he gets shot with an arrow, and her emotion towards him getting shot with an arrow did not match him getting shot with an arrow. It's like, how hard is it for you to, as an actor, be like, all right, he's gonna get shot with an arrow, all right? Action, let me see the emotion, right? This is supposed to be the Prince Charming of this movie, right? He just got shot with an arrow. Let's see what the emotion is. It wasn't there. She's just kind of like, Like, and this could also be, this might not be the actor's fault. This could also be the director's fault, because if you have any skill in directing and you've seen this kind of acting, you'd be like, all right, we're gonna do another take, and then you tell them what to do, or think about something that's gonna make them actually get to this emotion that you need for this shot, and not just for that shot, all the shots for her acting. Like, I'll give her some props. She can make her eyes tear, but whenever she's making her eyes tear, the emotion in her face doesn't match the emotion of the scene. The only thing she knows how to do was make her eyes tear, which she probably was using some sort of tricks anyway with like the menthol stuff or something like that. Because it's like, if you have the ability to cry like a trained actor can do, there's something emotional going on in your mind. There was nothing going on in her mind. You could see it. It's just somehow, I guess she, like I said, there's tricks, or she just has the ability to make her eyes tear. But that's it. Also, it could be maybe she can't take direction, or doesn't want to take direction. She could have that. I mean, we already know she has an attitude towards things where she's a know-it-all type of person. So maybe the director had a hard time of trying to tell her these things that I'm saying, and she just wouldn't change it. Like, in her mind, maybe like when she did it the way that she wanted to do it, maybe that was it. Like, all right, we got this, let's move on. So maybe she could be one of those actresses that's doesn't take direction well, or even the director doesn't have the power to control this type of actor. That could be a factor in this as well. Big problems that I seen were in the story and in the structure. I think that the film moved too quickly past all of its agenda-driven storylines and never gave you a chance to actually become emotionally attached to any given scene. It was always, here's this scene, let's get this agenda that we want to talk about, boom, move to the next one. The whole movie was kind of like that. It just dominoed all the way through. It's very fast. It didn't take any time to let you marinate into a scene. They just boom, click, and then boom, 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 boom. I remember watching the movie when she gets to the empty house of the seven dwarfs, which is supposed to be, half the movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. When she gets to their house, I'm thinking, I don't have any emotional attachment to any character in this movie yet. And that was like an hour into it. Like, by this point, you have to have someone that, as an audience member, that you're empathizing with. Right? So at that point, I felt nothing. I also thought that the Seven Dwarfs had no real presence in the movie. Meaning, if you were to take all their scenes out of the movie, you wouldn't even notice that they were in the movie. And that's a big problem considering it's called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We could probably thank Peter Dinklage for that one. There are two positives in the film that I do want to talk about. I thought that when they did the Hi-Ho song, I thought that was like the only scene in the whole movie that actually kicked a little bit of life into the movie. It was quick, but it was in and out. And then also, I thought a positive was when Gal Gadot was transforming into the evil witch with the apple. I thought that was well done. So they did good. They did a good job on the transformation, I thought. Like I said, the film's pacing was a big issue. It felt like a lot of individual clips thrown together, and it never gave you any time to build up any emotion or tension, which are essential ingredients in making a film. And then in the final act of the movie, when Snow White is regaining her castle back, or her kingdom, there was this odd moment where everyone was hailing to the queen, or to Snow White, and they did it in a very Hunger Games style fashion, but it was literally like a 2-second scene. It was, they did their kneeling to the new queen, whatever, and then they moved on to the next thing. Like, they didn't understand. Whoever made this movie didn't understand anything about filmmaking. Like, if you remember from the Hunger Games, that scene where the I volunteers tribute, right? That was probably like a 15-minute scene. We're talking about like a 2-second. They announced the new queen. They kneel, and then it moves on. Now I want to talk about some technical and production issues. One of the major things I thought was a lot of the shots were very tight, like even the establishing shots. And that's a technique that usually independent films do, or lower budget films, because it saves on budget if you don't have to open up the camera and put all that stuff in the background. But it's like, this was all CG. It didn't make any sense why they had to do a tight shots like that. The one thing that they could have made the film, a positive note on is looking good, but they chose to have very tight shots, and it just gave it a very low budget feel. And for a $250 million budget, you're expecting big, extravagant sets like Wicked, right? They had great sets. Practical sets, not just green screen cloth like I got behind me here. And for the singing, for the songs, I thought that they relied a lot on compression, which is a filter that you put over singers when they're not great singers. Now, it wasn't as bad as Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast, where they used auto-tune, like T-Pain. Like, you can hear a little bit of the auto-tune in there, just on, like, correcting certain notes, but they went really heavy on the compression, and you can just, it takes you out of the movie in terms of, we're not getting the true performance of this actor or actress, where it's a simulated version of their voice. And I'm sure there's plenty of actors out there that can sing, all right? Plenty. About an hour in, there was no storyline or plot line or subplot that was able to hold my interest. And I don't think I'm alone on that, which is why the movie is scoring so badly. It's just, they moved too quick past each one. They never set their feet and dug into a specific theme or even agenda, right? It's like, if you want to have a woke or agenda movie, lean into it, right? Own it. Don't brush up here and then brush up there to try to make everybody happy, because people know that. They see right through it. So my actual IMDb score is, I gave it a 2. I'm not gonna give it a 1, because if you give it a 1 or a 10, I think they do some sort of like they cancel those out. So give it a 2. The film lacked all the essential ingredients to actually be a movie, let alone a Hollywood movie, let alone a $250 million Disney movie, let alone a Disney classic. The cornerstone of Disney, that one of the movie that made the studio. Snow White struggled with the structure of the film. It didn't know what it was. It didn't know if it was a love story. It didn't know if it was some sort of rebellion movie. It didn't know if it was it was trying in some spots that you feel like we're gearing up for some sort of like war movie, like Kingdom of Heaven or something like that. It just had too many little segments of movies, different themes of movies, different genres of movies, all jammed into one piece. Now, how would I, the underdog producer, if given the opportunity, how would I fix this movie? Because clearly, based on all of the bombs that they got going on, they need some new blood. All right, someone to get in there and show them how it's done, like Gordon Ramsay Kitchen Nightmare style. All right, this is what I would do. First off, if you're gonna have a movie that's trying to be 3 different things, a love story, her winning her kingdom back, we're gonna develop 7 different dwarfs, right? Character develop them. If we're gonna have all these different things, then what we need to do first and foremost is, this movie cannot be an hour and 49 minutes long. This must be, in order to fix this, to save this movie, this must be at least a 2.5 hour movie long. Like Wicked. I think Wicked was almost 3 hours, right? You have all these different plots in there. You need to give them time to develop, to get sink in with the audience, so we actually can feel for these characters. So the first thing to fix this movie is it needs to be a longer movie, at least 2.5 hours. What would I do with those 2.5 hours? Well, first and foremost, I would fully develop Snow White's actual journey. All right, we're not just gonna skate through. We're we're not just gonna meet this this Prince Charming. Well, his scene is just this weird scene where he feels like it literally felt like again, like I said, a compilation of different genres. When the Prince Charming guy came in, it felt like I went from Snow White to watching Robin Hood Men in Tights. This is this weird genre clash, and that goes down the poor direction. So what do I do to fix that? First off, you gotta properly develop these characters. Okay, you need more than an hour and 50 minutes to do it. You need a long time. So first off, we need to rewrite some things in there. We need to gut the script and rewrite. We need to really focus on making these two characters connect, right? Because if we want any emotion, right, in the final scene when he kisses her and wakes her back up after she eats the apple and she's poisoned, we have to have that relationship developed over the course of a movie. You can't have a 2-minute scene of them meeting, and then a 2-minute scene of they're getting shot with arrows or whatever, and then just skip right to the apple scene. You can't do that. You cannot. You need to have some scenes in there that really, like for example, Little Mermaid, the Kiss the Girl song, right? You got to really lean into these moments, right? If you want that powerful moment to be powerful when he wakes her up, you got to have these different scenes that stand the test of time, right? You know, if we want to stay true to not pissing Peter Dinklage off, then what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to hire some actors, and I think this would have been the perfect opportunity to get some mid-level actors in there they're not the ones that they're using in every single film. Let's get some of these new up and coming names in there, right? So we can really develop their talent as well. Bring them along the ride, this Disney ride, all right? You got people that have been in all kinds of different Marvel shows and stuff like that. Like me, I've been in Loki, right? You can develop these kind of actors, right? You give these guys a chance to flourish, right? If you do that, right, instead of making these weird, creepy CG things, you can actually get a connection with the audience. Because it's very hard to have a CG connection with the audience if it's not a fully CG movie. Like for me personally, it's like watching Toy Story. Like, we already know what kind of movie we're in, right? It's not a surprise. We know that we're in this Pixar realm, so it's not gonna, you don't have to suspend disbelief too much to, I feel for Buzz. One of my favorite scenes of all time in all movie history is the scene where Buzz where he's like, no, it's not true. I can fly if I wanted to. And he pops his wings out and he goes to see if he can really fly, and he starts soaring in slow motion. He hits the ground and bounces. I think that's one of the most powerful scenes in my opinion in all of cinema history. But that's because we know what genre we're in when we're watching that movie. But now we fast forward to Snow White now. Are we in a live action or are we in CG? Right? And I think that because they were so creepy too, it's hard to connect. So like I said, real actors, and then we need at least one storyline. We don't need to develop all of them, right? Well, no, we need to develop all of them, but we need at least one storyline from the Seven Dwarfs that's going to carry all the way through, right? They're not just background actors, right? Their names in the damn title, all right? So we need to have one of them have a story that carries all the way through. That's not just part of the plot, that services the plot, right? Maybe one of them saved the day, all right? Not a random dwarf saved the day. Real life dwarf, not a CG. It almost felt like that was a last minute recast, almost like Disney's way of correcting the backlash of, you didn't have real dwarfs in there playing the Seven Dwarfs. You put CG in there. So it almost felt like they said, well, how about this? How about we'll cast one dwarf to save the day? It felt very forced. It felt out of place. And I think they should have just cut that out. And like I said, have one of the dwarfs, one of the seven dwarfs of the name of the damn movie, have one of them save the day. Because they didn't do anything in the movie. They were just there. And I think watching a lot of these odd moments in the film, it often felt like there was a lot of pieces that were put in to help fix the backlash that the community was making towards the film. Like there were last minute changes, and I feel like that is probably one of the reasons why the movie feels so disjointed, because they probably were going a certain way with the original story, and because they had to make all these changes, it had to weave in and out to try to be 4 different movies at the same time. I think that was probably because they had to try to correct these issues that should have been fixed before they even started production. We talked about how Rachel Zegler's acting was very bad. My opinion, and I think most people's opinion, whether they know it or not, that an actor's performance is usually only strong if they're able to show vulnerability. And she can't show any of it. She has zero vulnerability, and her character came off as a very know-it-all type character, and I think that's just herself bleeding through the character. So with no vulnerability as an actor, you don't have a good performance, and that's another reason why I think this movie tanked, because people are just, her performance is terrible. So here's a topic that might get a little controversy here, but me, I don't care about that. All right. So I think that one of the big problems that, and you can even Google this, that the movie was boycotted was because of Rachel Zegler's ethnicity, and that they should have cast a European actress. So here's how I would fix that. First off, we're talking about acting here, okay? Now, her being not of European descent, I don't think that should make a difference, right? Because if we look in the history of Hollywood is notorious for having people of certain ethnicities play different races, right? For example, Andy Garcia, all right? Cuban, I believe. How many times has he played in Italian in movies, all right? You pick up any movie that he's in, from back in the day, he's playing in Italian, all right? Do we care about that? No, we don't care about that. Well, let's go to female actresses now. Ana de Armas, all right? I probably botched that up, but she's Cuban, right? I believe she just played probably the most famous Caucasian actress ever, Marilyn Monroe, right? I don't think that anybody really cared about that. And Hollywood is notorious for having someone playing a different ethnicity, right? Me, I'm Italian and Filipino. I've been cast several times as a Native American. So this is something that's not new to Hollywood. I think the actual problem here was that people are upset that she didn't preserve the look of the Disney classic of Snow White, of white skin, right? That's what this movie's about, her having snow white skin. So the way that I would fix that, right? Because acting is about, you're not the character, right? You're embodying a character. You as the actor are going to take on this character. You're not actually the actor. I mean, you're not actually the character. You're going to take it on. So how would I fix that? Very, very, very simple. If they were so dead set in casting Rachel Zegler, which they were, you fix that in the way that Tim Burton did the makeup on Johnny Depp for Sweeney Todd. Right? No one cares, right? They made him look like very pale. They also did it in Dark Shadows, right? Edward Scissorhands. They made him very pale. No one cares. If they want to preserve the look of the original, just make her look like the character. You can make anybody look like anybody. Robert Downey Jr. played an African American in Tropic Thunder. You can make anyone look like anyone. They should have just used their special effects, and no one would have cared. But they didn't, and they lost a ton of money. So, like I said, That is how I would fix it. If I was swooping through this movie kitchen like Gordon Ramsay on Kitchen Nightmares, that's how I would clean it up. That's how I would save this movie, all right? And my final thought is that even watching the trailer, after watching the movie, I'm watching the trailer and I'm like, did I watch this movie? Did I actually see this movie? Like, there was nothing memorable about the movie because the movie felt like it was made by a marketing team and not filmmakers. You need to get rid of these marketing teams that are making the films and let real filmmakers make the movie. I felt like I was watching a goddamn Disney cruise ad, right? You know when you watch a Disney cruise ad, you're like, oh, I want to go on that cruise. And when you watch the actual movie and it's over, you're like, oh, I feel like I want to watch the movie because what the hell did I just watch? It's the same thing. We were watching an hour and 50-minute marketing campaign for a Disney cruise. Even the high ho song, they had the mine train in there. They did a little bit of shameless advertising in there. So that's what I said. This movie was a marketing piece, in my opinion. It wasn't a movie. It was a marketing piece. And my reasons in here, all right, watch it back if you have to. That's how you would save this movie. That's it. Underdog producer signing out.